So the last decade has been more or less the same for fantasy as well. 2016 is when we had 2 million active daily fantasy users. I'm talking about 2016, which is fairly 4 years from now. And currently, where we stand, the daily active users have crossed 60 million and are supposed to be around 100. The official numbers are going to come after the IPL is done. But yeah, so there has been around 200, 215% growth every year since 2016. So that's huge. That's huge for the industry. That's huge for a lot of other factors as well. So in India, as I said before, the daily fantasy sports contests are more popular. Why these are called DFS is because uh, in the US, the fantasy revolves around the entire season, and they have year-long seasons. They have EPL, which goes on for 9 to 10 months, and they have other leagues which are also fairly long. And the fantasy around that there also have a format which a player can come in and try and play it for the entire season, and there are winners at the end of it, right? So, but in India, obviously, we don't have such long leagues, and secondly, I think the gratification requirement here is in terms of time frame is much earlier than what a real fantasy or a league fantasy shows outside the country. Also, in 2017, I mean, just to give you a little background, there was a complaint made on the High Court and Supreme Court alleging that there's an angle of gamble around fantasy, which basically came to the picture because there was real money being involved. And but eventually it was ruled out, and it was proved that it is a game of skill and not pure betting, because sports betting is a completely different domain which is active, which is legal in many countries, not in India for now. But there was a clear visible differentiation or a difference between what a sport betting is and what is a fantasy platform trying to do. So that's how that got ruled out, and they got a green signal in being able to grow. Um, so yeah, as I said, a culture of daily fantasy sports players that contribute to the rapid growth from 2016 to 2018, majorly this period, currently has put India in the front seat of becoming the largest or the biggest daily fantasy sport market in the world. Because, as I said, uh, a lot of the fantasy players or a lot of the fantasy activities are around year-long leagues or long leagues outside of the country. But here in India, due to the adoption that we're just talking about, it is almost at the driving seat of becoming the biggest DFS market in the world. Moving forward, I'll just give you a brief of what the current scenario is, and this might also give you an understanding of the kind of scope fantasy holds for the future. So these are numbers again for 19. There's a lot of change that has happened this year. There's a lot of investments that have come in. So uh, there are not solid numbers around it, so I'll not be able to tell you that. But yes, by figures from FY19 itself, you'll be able to understand the kind of scale that I'm actually trying to portray here. The revenues from fantasy sport operators stand at 2004. I mean, they stood at 2,400 crore in uh, FY20 compared to what it was in FY19. So you can imagine the growth here from 920 to 2,400 crores, which is majorly attributed to the kind of awareness that came around at that point of time, and also the internet penetration that was constantly happening. Investments have been heavy for the last 3 to 4 years. 2018 and 2019, they saw the figure written here is actually last year, because a figure close to this was raised by one player this year, almost close to this. So Dream 11 almost raised this much. So the figures for the overall investment are going to be way higher than this, but this is what we are sure of, and that's why this again gives you an idea of the scale that I'm talking about. Um, so a lot of numbers here, the growth rate in terms of how rapidly they are growing and where the industry or the market tends to stand at 2024. 3.7 billion is a huge number. Just to give you some perspective, the online cab aggregator service currently is at 63 and we are at 3. So obviously, I mean, you can understand the scale that this is growing and the potential that it holds. Uh, a lot of it is also complementing or is directly proportional to the fact that we India is also introducing a lot of leagues like IPL, hockey, kabaddi, volleyball, and a lot more, which has aided in users uh, who've got a taste of how to be or how to participate in a fantasy sport, and they now would want to expand their portfolio, or how do I put it, their playing portfolios across other sports as well. Obviously, this requires a little bit of research, and this requires a little bit of understanding of the sport, but that has definitely aided in the growth. Um, as we speak, there are more than 140 fantasy operators. Many come, many rise to a certain level. Sustainability is difficult. I'll come to the challenges later. But yes, so there's a visible trend of people trying to capture this market and trying to be different in this particular segment. I'll start with challenges because yes, there are definitely challenges with growth. It does come in. When I talk about steep competition, I'm sure you guys would know what competition I'm talking about. And because there is steep competition, the overall acquisitions, the overall retention, the money that is going in terms of trying to ensure that your users are actually creating value on the platform is too high. So competition is affecting the entire industry in terms of the kind of money that needs to be invested. That's one thing. Also, 80% of the total fantasy players currently prefer free to play. So we do not have a major chunk of people who are putting in money for the actual game. So there lacks there lacks a big gap in terms of how uh, platforms have positioned themselves. And secondly, there also lies a huge opportunity in terms of trying to get more players put in money and start playing real time, like real money and playing the game. So small chunk of HPVs, which are high value players, that's across industry, and that's where I think a major challenge also comes. Hello, yeah, yeah. So this is again one challenge that we've been trying to solve ourselves as well. Uh, as I said, awareness building needs continuous investments on the brand, and failing to do that can lead to direct impact on revenues. I mean, I understand brand investments are not directly uh, ever associated with the revenues. I mean, they have other ways of having the KPIs defined, but here, unless and until you are constantly on the top of the mind of a fantasy player, I don't think it's sustainable later on. So it cannot be an input output kind of a model where you're putting in X amount and definitely going to get back that, or your users are going to keep playing. You will have to constantly spend on being able to create that awareness or stay in the top of the man and fight the biggies that are already there in the industry. So that's one major challenge, where if you do not have deep pockets, or if you do not have budget assigned to your awareness, you might wither away. There's always a gray area once it is uh, I mean, once there are people who are complaining about this being aligned towards gambling, there's always going to be people who are going to do that, and hence there'll always be a gray area in terms of real money infusion, and it's not going to affect the scale, but it might be going towards a phase where there's a lot of ambiguity around what's going to happen next. I would not. I mean, I'll say that there's less ambiguity in terms of where fantasy stands now as compared to other real money platforms like Rummy or any other card games. But still, it's a gray area, and the operators need to be careful while advertising, while doing all of their growth activities. Uh, Low average deposit value. I mean, I'm basically average deposit value is what your users are going to deposit in their wallet to play later, or on the platform to play later, right? So that again has been, so this is somewhere correlating to the second point, where a small chunk of HVVs is what I was talking about. Automatically that results to a majority of your users actually trying to play for free or putting in really less amount of money, and which from an economics of scale perspective does not make sense if you keep acquiring users who are not going to give you that kind of ROAS. So that's again a major challenge in the industry. But yes, I mean, with time and with proper growth strategies around that, there's continuous scope of improvement there as well. Um, as most of you would know, real money gaming platforms are not allowed to be listed on Google Play Store, which is for Android. And given the penetration of Android in India currently, that's a huge backlog. I mean, in terms of the acquisition channel that it could have been. Automatically, the acquisition costs are over the roof, and you need real good deep pockets to be able to compete with the biggies that are there in the industry. So again, all of these factors are challenges, but yes, there are opportunities as well. Opportunities are majorly can be derived from the current scenario that I just spoke of in the beginning. The market is growing exponentially. It's untapped in various aspects and holds opportunities to add additional new users. I'm talking about untapped because there's a majority of users who are not aware of fantasy. There are majority of users who are wary of getting into it, having apprehensions about the platform being a betting enabler. But I think the opportunity there lies where you are able to educate people, get more new users in place, try and get them hooked onto the product. By hooked on, I'm not meaning in a negative way. By hooked on, they should be able to get an understanding of the platform being a skill-based platform where they can go back, do their analysis, do their research, come back, put in their amount, and try and win uh, their earnings out of it, right? Because it's basically them having done their research and coming back. So I think uh, the market is untapped in that way, where there are a lot of prospects to be able to add new users on a daily scale or on a yearly scale. That's there. And majority market share is held by one player, and that I have told you then, and that leaves ample opportunity for others to come in and try and be creative and try and put in as much efforts possible to be able to take any kind of market share that is available. So just in theory, if I'm talking about one player having 90% of the market share, the entire that the second place is quite open for any player to come in and try and take advantage and try and at least gain that position in the market. So I think there lies a big opportunity as well. Cricket, which holds the majority share in the fantasy sports enthusiasts, will always be a rave in India. That's going to be a religion. Cricket is always going to be there. It's here for it has been here for quite some time, and it's going to be there for a lot of time. That's what I can assume. And that's why the opportunity there to be able to educate your cricket lovers or people who follow cricket, which is huge, and try and give them a value. I mean, try and make them understand the value of coming and putting in that kind of effort in the platform and winning would be another area of opportunity for all the fantasy players. Now the part which I was taking care of, now the part from where I come from, marketing around it and what kind of nuances are there, how do you handle it, or the problems that you might face, the opportunities that might come in. I'm sure, I mean, all the growth people here would definitely know the objectives. I mean, the TG definitely needs to be defined first in any kind of acquisition, but here the level of segregation that is required for each TG is huge. I mean, new user acquisition, which can be a vast universe, as I just spoke about in the last slide, would have an additional persona definition where we know these people are wary of fantasy as a platform, or we know these people are ready to try, but they have zero knowledge about how the game is played. We know people they follow IPL or they follow cricket on a daily scale, but they do not want to be able to go ahead and have any alliances with any kind of real money attribution. So the TG needs multiple level of segregation because your communication, your way of acquiring these users are going to be completely different. The channel mix is going to be different, and that's where a majority of a marketer's work in a fantasy domain comes in, where he understands what is his best communication that needs to go out, what are the value proposition of the product that he needs to put out, and what would be the best channels to do that. So keeping that in mind, I think communication requires a very high degree of creativity as the value prop remains more or less similar across platforms. So all the fantasy operators, as I said, are daily fantasy facilitate daily fantasy sporting events, right? So more or less, the value proposition from each one of them remains the same. To be able to stand out becomes really difficult when you become a me too, right? So that is where your communication requires that degree of creativity to bring out the actual differentiation factor of why a user should come to your online platform, or your fantasy platform and play and not more. So there has been some study which I've not mentioned here. 20 to 30% of the fantasy players are not loyal. They do not play in one platform. They try and they try their hands at various platforms. Now, that's a sweet spot. If you're able to communicate your value prop well, you might be able to get some loyalists out of there, or at least get some regular players out of there. As I said, channel mix here requires a lot of hypertesting. Hypertesting is a term where, I mean, this is something that we've done before. Uh, it's physically impossible to have all the channels involved for a particular campaign at one particular given point of time. You cannot have your Hotstars running, or you cannot have your USCs, or you cannot have all of that running unless and until the objective is being met by utilizing all of these channels. I'm sure the growth people would understand this. But having said that, you at any given point of time, you need to be able to pick out the best performing channel for you. There are possibilities that that channel does not work well after 3 months, or after the IPL, or after any sporting event. But knowing what channel is going to give you the kind of users that you require, and what channel is going to give you the kind of engagement that you require for your particular platform, I think that's the key to be able to go ahead and decide it. Uh, with the competition, as I spoke in the beginning, being steep, every channel in the mix should be open to scale, because you cannot decide on a channel. For example, let's say I'm acquiring users through Bing. It's not scalable. I know after one point of time, all the money that I invested in being able to acquire X number of users from Bing are not going to give me the return. So understanding the channel and its scale, where I can attribute it to the CLV that's going to come from those users, is extremely important here. Or else you'll be in a state of burn and you'll not even understand where you're burning and why you're burning, because your engagements are high but your revenues are not coming in. So this is one major point that needs to be taken into consideration. I've stressed on this before as well. Brand building and positioning is an absolute necessity. Uh, that's that again probably comes out of the fact, or that also is displayed by the fact that there's a lot of investments happening uh, in the fantasy domain, because there's a lot of money required to stay afloat in terms of people's mind, or top of mind, or trying to even create that kind of awareness or recall in the market. So with this proliferation of online fantasy operators, and the kind of money that is being spent on creating that kind of awareness and acquiring users, I think building that, having the positioning early in the game, and concentrating on the brand in the beginning becomes really important here. So now retention and engagement is extremely crucial. I mean, I understand retention is crucial for any business for that matter, but here uh, it becomes a part of your entire marketing strategy. So much so that there will be stages where you'll be spending only on retention, and not acquiring users, because you would know that makes business sense at this point of time. So there are stages that such stages also come through the life cycle of let's say 1 year, or maybe a sporting event. I'm telling you this because it's your HVPs, which I told you as a challenge before. The high value players are usually less in number, and if they are lower than 20%, and your revenue, 90% of your revenue is coming from that, it's usually a Pareto rule where 80-20 happens. But if this ratio comes in, you'll have to put in a lot of effort to ensure that your users are actually coming to your platform and playing, and not going anywhere else. So that's how your retention or engagement becomes extremely, or very very important for an online fantasy operator. And I think a lot of that depends on how you're communicating to your HVPs, LVPs, and your MVPs, where your low value players have a certain set of communication, your medium value players have a certain set of communication, and you treat your high value players like your god. So that's how it is done, and that's extremely crucial in any kind of growth that an online fantasy platform wants to see. Again, the future, I think, with all that spoken, the future is quite evidently bright for fantasy in India. The network effect around fantasy is spawning a whole new ecosystem for growth, which is in return strengthening the industry's future also in the country. So the diagram here would show fantasy at the center and how it is affecting other ecosystems to grow as well. uh, People are going to be more inclined to know the sport better. They want to understand each player's statistics. They would want to understand each player's performance so that they can go back and play, put in money. uh, Growth in the supporting infrastructure is basically proliferations of discussion forums. Let's call it a Telegram or YouTube channels or influencers who are giving tips. They're basically called tipsters. So tipsters who are giving tips on how do you create a team and go ahead and play. And there's so much. There's an ecosystem being built around fantasy as a whole, and that's again seeing an exponential growth in its side. um, Obviously the amount of investment on sports is also increasing. I mean, that can be attributed to one player and many other players as well. Merchandising, brand ambassadors, creating awareness about the sport, everything is inclined towards how fantasy is also growing arm in arm, and that's one more factor which strengthens fantasy's position for the future. um, and On the longer run, the digital payment platforms are gaining out of it. There's a lot of deposits happening, that the transaction frequency are high, and in return the government is also getting money out of it. So it's a win-win here. One issue in the future that might come in, which I foresee, but I'm not sure how early or how late. If online betting is ever made legal in India, which have been in talks for quite some time. There are discussions, there are forums where people want to make online betting legal. By online betting, I'm talking about real betting. It's how betting happens, right? So even the betting sites abroad, they have legalized. US has legalized it. Many other countries have legalized it. So uh, the way that works, it's huge. The online betting market there is huge, and if that ever happens in India, it's going to be a direct effect on the fantasy sport because, as I said in the beginning as well, gratification in India is primary. They need immediate gratification. A lot of consumers are depending on their winnings to come in daily or immediately for that matter, and that's where an online betting is going to disrupt the entire industry, and maybe people are going to shift to this, and there'll still be a chunk who would want to be able to utilize their skill and try and be at the fantasy and try and get their winnings from there. But a majority of the chunk would definitely go to the online betting if it is made legal. Uh, Lastly, I think I just want to conclude this by telling you how what are the users currently looking at from an online fantasy operator. The survey shows numbers which are from a considerably large sample size, where these were the percentages that came out in terms of what are people looking at additionally from a fantasy platform in terms of value. These are important numbers because this is where you try and differentiate yourselves, as I said in the beginning, in terms of what a platform is giving as value. And the next step of pivoting or pioneering in terms of a holistic platform would definitely be based on this. A lot of them want live match tickets for sporting events because obviously they they are the kind of enthusiasts that live and sleep and eat and drink that particular sport. Uh, some of them want to meet their favorite sport persons because in India it's again a religion. You get to meet someone, he's a celebrity for you. Merchandising, which is already started at a scale. In fact, all of this has taken pace in the recent times. A lot of platforms are doing this. The fourth, 27% of people want credits for playing more games, winning money on the same fantasy sport platform. So this is very important because this is the chunk which really wants to circulate its winning in the platform itself, which is a very good thing for any platform. I mean, if I'm going to win X, I want to be able to put 20% of that X again and try and win. So these are the kind of users that are going to be really valuable in the longer run, and they'll make the CLV versus CAC ratio sound really good for you guys. But I think this particular chunk is the most lucrative chunk for an online fantasy operator to be able to concentrate on and help them play more, win more, and that's how they should go ahead with. So this clearly paves way for, as I said, a line extension from product offerings for various platforms that are currently active. I did tell you before, right? Some of the players are already doing this, and I think that's going to be the way forward. So, yeah, guys, this was a brief gist of what I believe fantasy currently is at and where it is going to be in the future and how it had started and how my involvement gave me some idea of the industry and how the kind of scope that it holds and how growth or what marketing can do to these platforms and how important it is for them. So yeah, Ayush, this is it.
All right. Thanks, Siddharth. You are able to hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, all right. Okay, Siddharth. So thanks for presenting a detailed this slides, I would say. It was short and crisp, but to be very
Yeah,
honest, I personally have worked a little bit for this event, and I have gathered a set of questions that I'm going to shoot towards you. But at the
absolutely.
same time,
Please.
yeah, and these questions may vary and might sound as new, but at the same time, it might
No,
be
no.
a high level question as well, and you can choose to not answer any question if you
No,
feel.
no, absolutely. I mean, no question is a bad question. So please go ahead.
All right. So just to start it off as basic question as it is. So let's say, for example, if someone is a marketeer or in marketing department of a fantasy sports, be it any, it can be Dream 11 or it can be My Team 11 or any. Uh, is there a certain set of metrics that each of these players follow, or each players have different set of metrics that they try to achieve or follow?
See, on an overall scale, I think the performing metrics or the KPIs are going to be uniform across, right? I mean, you start a business, you know that from a fantasy perspective, you need to be able to look at your average rake. By rake, I mean the kind of revenue that is coming in from the users. So from a KPI perspective or from a metrics perspective, I think most of the metrics is aligned to each other. The value proposition is the same. It's not that one fantasy player is a daily fantasy platform and the another fantasy player is a league long fantasy platform. So we are not having that those kind of comparison where the KPIs might differ a lot. The CLVs are big. Here it's almost the same, but if you deep dive into it, as I said, you'll have to have your segments. A particular segment or a particular bucket of your consumers might be behaving separately, and you might want to attach some additional KPIs to them, or you might want to detach some KPIs from them and then figure out, okay, this is where I'm not going to spend any money and I'm not going to try and get those KPIs. But overall, I don't think there's a lot of change anyway.
All right. And if they are following all those similar KPIs, so what all are these KPIs? Is it customer lifetime value, or is it what you can say daily active users, or the paying users? How is it? Average ticket size.
The most valuable KPI that I would want to cite here would be your
Customer
uh,
lifetime.
average rate per person. So average revenue per user. All right. So my that's something that I believe in. It cannot be universal because I somehow believe your marketing efforts should not be isolated towards only acquiring and increasing your DAUs or only focusing on your current user base and trying to increase the revenue out of there. So on an overall scale, I think the average rate per user is something that should be constantly monitored for any platform or any online fantasy platform.
All right.
In addition to that, I mean the DAUs and MAUs do matter because it's a funnel. You need to be able to figure out how your revenue comes in, and is there stickiness or no, or are people just coming in and going back, or are your uninstalls high? There are a lot of other metrics that come into the picture, but I think from a business perspective, your average rate per person and your and the common metrics, right? Your acquisition cost. Are you paying a lot to be able to acquire one registered user, and how much are you paying to get 100 deposit from a
Mhm.
acquired user from a retention perspective? Different metrics that we look at differently, but these are metrics that everyone looks at. So I'll not be able to cite a completely unique metric for you, but yes, at every given stage of the business, I think the objective or the focus should be defined for what you're trying to achieve.
Got it. Uh, I guess someone has questions. So yeah, Siddharth wants to ask Siddharth. He wants to ask you, what can we learn from Fantasy League that we can use for gamification of brand engagements?
All right. So apart from fantasy, because a fantasy platform is a very high intent based platform, so engagement would directly be proportional to a person who wants to at least come and try a tournament, or maybe just try and understand how the game is played, or actually is a player who's coming in for a particular tournament or a match, right?
Yeah.
So the intent here is very high, so the engagement is directly attributed to him coming in and playing. So I cannot have any sort, I mean, I can, but from a gamification perspective, for which can help fantasy platforms improve their overall KPIs, I think there's very limited that anyone can do, because it's a game already. You need to be able to get to the floor, try putting in money. Maximum you can do is have free leagues so that they can practice and then they come back and play. But there are other ways to try and engage these users to come to a fantasy platform. For example, cricket.com that I was working on. Uh, we were trying to educate, I mean, we're trying to create a funnel which drives users from cricket.com to FanFight and help them take informed decisions, right? So cricket.com did see a lot of gamifications in terms of engagement. It's a content consumption platform at the end. So that is where a lot of our gamifications went out, to engage users, to make them understand. There were features which were specific to fantasy, which help them understand how teams can be created, where they can have one short look at all the statistics of those particular players and then take a call. So a lot of gamification went there, but on a platform for fantasy, I don't think there's a lot. I mean, at least from my side, I don't think there's a lot of scope there.
Okay, I guess he's clarifying few things. I meant not online, not fantasy brands can learn of on gamification. Siddharth, you can unmute yourself if you want, and you can have a word with Siddharth directly, so that
Hi. So essentially, what I was trying to get at is that if a non, say, given the fact that you essentially are working on a product which essentially it's a game, so you have to engage users constantly. You get them back, all so on and so forth. For a brand who wants to do gamification, I say gamification is how to engage, which kind of which leads them to kind of interact more with the brand. So is there something which I can say probably take out from your playbook, which I can use for a brand which is not into gaming, which is it's not an online brand and it's not a fantasy league kind of a brand as well.
Got it. So basically, see, going back to what I just said, right? Because um, from a gamification perspective, I think it becomes very important for us to understand key what is the final objective that we want to do. When you talk about interacting with the brand, I am assuming that you would be talking about interacting with the brand with the final objective where either he's able to have a recall for it, or he's able to go and complete a particular action on the platform, or whatever it is. I mean, there would be an objective assigned to it, I'm sure. So keeping that in mind, I'll just give you an example of what happened in cricket.com and how we were able to come out with a gamification concept, or how we were able to point on something that we needed to do to increase engagement per se. So during the lockdown, I'm sure you guys would know there was no cricketing event and there's no sporting event at all. So the level of acquisitions that we've had before, we were at a spot that we were losing them on a daily scale. There's nothing to engage with, right? So there's no value for a user to come in on a cricket platform, on a second screen platform where there's no live action happening. So that is where you pivot, you try experimenting a lot of things, and that's where we try and understand what is the final objective. We want people to spend more time on the platform, not uninstall. At that point, it was not uninstall at all, and engage in any way possible. So we tried and uh, we implemented certain games inside the platform itself, like the trump card that we used to play long back. We made a digital version of that, and that invariably also helped users get to know about a lot of stats about players. And it became a very nostalgic affair for them, where they started playing trump card again. They were sharing scores. We were communicating about the game a lot more, and obviously that showed a spike in the engagement. So going back to Siddharth's question, this cricket.com was not a fantasy platform, and the gamification idea came out of a little bit of backtracking in terms of X is the objective and what all can I do. Unless and until the objective is defined, I think putting in gamification for just trying to create engagement is not going to help you in the longer run, because people get bored. We saw that people get bored of a game very quickly, and unless and until it really holds some value. For example, you could, I mean, which usually happens, right? You could batch them, or you could incentivize them by engaging better. You could probably give them more engage. I mean, you could give them batches for engaging in a particular way, or referring, or many other things, which also comes under gamification. But what I'm trying to essentially say is, unless and until there's an objective defined in terms of what engagement means for you and how it's gonna boil down to value in the later stage, you might want to deliberate as much as possible before introducing any kind of gamification.
All right, Siddharth, I guess you got your answer. And just to add to what Siddharth said, I was going through this article that talks about how gamification can be implemented, and few channels that have few players who have implemented gamification in a better way. So if we can connect over LinkedIn, probably I can share you the link of that article, and probably that might help you as well. So thanks for the question, Siddharth. Now moving on to the next question. Abhinav, I'll take your question after this. So uh, like you mentioned about lockdown happened, you ended up coming up with this particular idea of coming up with trump cards. uh, my question initially was, I was trying to ask you that if I have to ask your experience, because you have been there with cricket.com for quite some time now. I guess you were there with them for a year or more than
More
that.
than that, more than that.
Yeah. Now let's say, for example, you guys were in a mindset that, okay, IPL is going to happen in the month of April. You guys were planning all your marketing campaigns accordingly.
Yeah.
I feel all those TVCs which we saw on Hotstar were also shot before that itself,
Yeah.
right? And then COVID happened. Everything went for a toss. Now to come bounce back from that particular moment and do something of this sort, wherein you are back in the field, wherein the rest of the world is still in the same what you can say phase, but cricket sports has started to move on.
Yes.
So how you as a head of growth, how you as a head of team took that challenge, and what all things went on inside?
I think it was more of um, uh, there were some opportunities that we could have tapped into because of the pause,
Okay.
and there were some challenges as well, as I told you. So from a challenges perspective, the major challenge for me was not that okay, now IPL is stopped and what do I do. The major challenge is now how do I engage my users, because I've acquired a majority of the chunk.
Yeah.
And on any given day pre COVID, I think every month had around 10 to 15 days of India playing any kind of a match.
Yeah.
It might be a Australia tour or any other match that was happening. So my acquisitions and my engagement was at par, which could have been leveraged upon massively if the timelines were maintained, right? So I knew my X was when I had to start IPL, and I have to grow exponentially. When that came to a halt, the majority of our focus went to be able to let our users stay. And the questions that you're asking, okay, how do we go about it? So we just did not think about, okay, what's going to happen when IPL comes next. In fact, it was a relief because everything was planned. My channel was put in, my TVCs were in place, my the channel mix was ready, so we were ready to go ahead, unless and until there are some drastic changes that comes in terms of budget or in terms of final objectives. But keeping that aside, I think the whole focus had to be changed to look at the product as the front runner in being able to engage users, and us being able to communicate it better to our existing users through notice or whatever mediums that we had, and try and not lose or drain out the users that we had, so that we could go ahead with a considerable amount of chunk for IPL and not start from scratch.
Okay.
So that was the major idea. When IPL started, obviously some of the budget did not correlate to what we had before. But having said that, I think we were already on war footing before that, so that did not affect a lot.
All right. Thanks for sharing. Now, the next question is from Abhinav. Considering that fantasy gaming apps are not on Google Play Store, how big a challenge is to acquire users from traditional marketing channels? He means to ask about the user journey from ad to install.
See, I think the major challenge here for a fantasy gaming app not being on the Google Play Store is the obnoxious cost per installs and registrations, and then the revenue, right? It just shoots up. Uh, that's one major challenge that everyone has to face. It's an industry level challenge. That's why I told you, if you do not have deep pockets, you'll not be able to make a market. I mean, I'm just telling you, there are definitely players who started from scratch and grown up, and they've utilized their current base and then gone up. But I think that's the huge challenge that we have. When you're asking specifically about the user journey from an ad to install, that more or less remains the same across industry. I mean, that's what I have seen. We still have 20, 22, 25% click to install rates. Uh, uh, the problem here that becomes a little difficult to handle is, although your click to install rates or your overall percentages in terms of KPIs are high, the click itself is going to be 6x than what it would be, because there's competition as well. It's not that you're out of Play Store and there's no competition. If you're out of Play Store and there's no competition, you'll be in a very good space. But you're out of Play Store and there's a huge competition for that particular domain, and that just makes the entire acquisition process really heavy, right? So you need to be able to manage your channels accordingly.
All right. You mentioned about the stuff, and I had asked you this thing when we met as well. Cricket.com will always have an edge, knowing the fact that you have a pretty solid domain, right? Do you feel like do you think it is something that can be cashed upon currently or in future, or it has already been cast in a better way?
So it's both a boon and a curse. I'll tell you why. Boon is because of the recall. Cricket.com, um, I myself, when I joined in, I was like, how did you even get this?
Yeah.
So uh, that's always there from a recall perspective, but from an SEO perspective, the kind of keywords that you have to look at for cricket, for being able to even come there, and with the biggies like Crick Info and Crick Buzzes already taking that space, and Google's algorithm obviously depends on the kind of engagement that comes to those platforms. Even if you have the domain cricket.com,
Mhm.
cricket as a word is being utilized by everyone. It's a common term. So that's where your challenges in terms of SEO comes into the picture. Uh, but from an advantage point of view, I think yes, I a lot of the inquisitiveness or curiosity is about, okay, is it cricket.com? Is it BCCI? Is
Okay.
it directly ICC? What is it? And so marketers' task is to be able to tap on that curiosity and give them value. So that has always helped from a channel and an acquisition perspective. So yeah, both.
Okay. All right. Pragati has a question for you, and she wants to ask that, as we all know, AI and machine are reshaping every industry from education to retail to manufacturing. So yes, both technologies are revamping fantasy sports. So as a growth hacker or a digital marketer, what factors should we consider?
As a growth hacker or a digital marketer, Pragati, we should just pray that they don't take our jobs pretty soon. That's something that gives me sleepless nights too. But on a lighter note, I think it's a boon. I mean, it's definitely something that can be leveraged on to let's say enhance your performance, or automations that you have in place, reduce your fraud downloads or fraud installs. There's so much that AI can do currently. There's so much that people are actually doing out there. I mean, every day there's a technology which is able to increase your effectiveness or efficiency in terms of how you're acquiring and utilizing the AI or ML per se, right? Just to give you a brief, I think cricket.com has a very strong algorithm, which is AI and ML backed, which gives out predictions in terms of who's going to win, how a player is going to perform. These are basically data based analysis, which is out on the platform. So, although as a marketer, for me, to be able to position these numbers as something that is coming out from an AI machine is not going to help me, because the mindset out there is data, cricket, entertainment doesn't go in hand. So to be able to present it in a palatable way, that became extremely important for us. But I think what Pragati is trying to ask here is what factors should we consider, because AI ML is changing the industry altogether from an acquisition perspective. I think what we should consider is to keep a keen eye on how things are changing in terms of the entire funnel, or in terms of what activities does a marketer do, and how AI is coming in and helping us, or are there any nuances, or are there any factors that we need to consider before trying to merge marketing versus a plus AI and ML, because this is going to be a long discussion. This is always I've spoken about this with a lot of my colleagues, where sentiments and a little bit of creativity, and where you need to understand how your TG is perceiving your product. There's still a huge chunk or a huge factor which comes out from a marketer's learning, right? It cannot be AI all the time. There might be data all the time available, and what it necessarily does, it just tells you how to go ahead with the amount of data that is available. But after a point, I think from a marketer's journey, you will always need to understand your manual intervention is going to be required. So for me, I think it's just going to help us increase our effectiveness. That's about it.
Right. I guess you answered that.
Siddharth.
Sorry. Oh,
Thank you, Siddharth.
Thanks.
all right. So the next question I have for you is basically, as you also mentioned that fantasy sports has seen upsurge in last 4 years, and in a country like India, where a lot of legalities, a lot of controversies, and everything are surrounding the particular new thing that is right now in the ecosystem. So do you think like what's your take on the legalities? Let's say for example GST and all of these things, they also play a big role, and since there is some sort of payment involved, does this make the whole fantasy sport a little bit complex, or on the operational front, or is it like the processes are already set there?
From an operational front, Ayush, I think it's all seamless, because the tech has advanced so much. I think operationally getting these nuances handled, or these formalities handled, is not going to be a problem for any of the platform currently operationally.
Mhm.
But from a legal perspective, I did touch upon that a little bit, where fantasy is still in the gray area, but it's still better than what a card gaming platform is doing out there. Or I mean, basically, the knife is not here yet. We never know what happens. There's a lot to be deliberated on how real money gaming is happening on the other side of platforms apart from fantasy. Uh, but yeah, I mean that's one of the constraints that has always been there. That is one of the roadblocks that I would say in terms of the growth. But having said that, I think personally, if you ask me, I think it's not going to be something which is going to hamper the growth, because
Okay.
at the end of the day, there's a huge factor of you understanding how the game is played, who's playing well, skills that you need to develop on an incremental basis to be able to perform well. It has been proved that you pay attention to what is happening and you can come back and select your team. So I think that factor is always going to help fantasy grow.
All right. So, guys, you can all continue to put your questions in the chat section. Meanwhile, I have just last three questions with me. Uh, Talking about since in the Indian ecosystem, we have a couple of big names, or not talking about just big names, we have a couple of players in the fantasy sports. Now, you happen to mention in your last slide that what is the distinguished factor between each one of them, right? But what else apart from that? Because let's say if we just stick to all three or four of them, for four of them, what else? What can be the next big thing which we can see in the fantasy sport?
I think the next big thing for fantasy and as an industry would be to create awareness all along. I mean, from a value proposition perspective, the value is going to be more or less similar, as I told you, right? The value is going to be that increase your chances of winning. How do you want to educate your users, or how do you want to educate your TG, telling you, okay, this is going to be entertaining, this is going to be gratifying, this is where you can come in and spend the time that you spend not understanding, or spend the time that you spend elsewhere and put in X amount of money there, but you could probably try on skills here. So the next big thing per se, you never know. I mean, the last chart where the expectancy from what a fantasy platform should be able to give from the users is huge, and that's the scope for being able to grow that way, where you gratify them by giving them tickets, you gratify them by actually making them meet their favorite players. uh, the intent can be very varied, right? So I might be someone who doesn't want to win money, but if I'm given a chance to go and meet Virat Kohli, I'll definitely want to play that pool. So I think various ways of gratifying the user base is going to be the next big thing, and there might be some really innovative ideas that might come up there. Even I want to be able to see what comes next, because currently, from a core value proposition perspective, it just remains the same. You come in, you play, increase your chances to play, and then that's how you gratify yourself. Obviously, there are different level of pools. The larger the pool of players, the larger the winning amount. That's again a driving factor. All of that are basic things that are driving interaction. But from a very innovative perspective, the question that you asked, I think I'm also looking forward to what's next, what's going to change the course of fantasy going ahead. But yeah.
All right. Uh, as we have already crossed the 1 hour mark, probably uh, I guess we have two questions more, and I have a couple of more questions. So what you can do is you can just stick to 60-second rule, wherein you can try to just wind it up in 60 seconds so that it's just short
Yeah.
and clear.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
He has another question, and he wants to ask: would you have to pay the players royalties since you would be using their stats, spaces, and reputation to market the game? Players in sense, famous cricketers, and all those things.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you use Indian Premier League in a creative ad, and you get a notice uh, from those guys telling you cannot use. So you'll have to play. You'll have to give your royalties. You'll have to any kind of usage that there's a list of requirements that comes into the picture, unless and until it's a editorial image which is available to be used. If you are going to be able to, if you are requiring to use any specific image for your own brand promotion, I think more than royalties, you'll have to sign a deal with them. So as simple as that. So that's how the entire industry works, and it's huge amount of money.
Okay. And
Yes, even if it's an illustration, as I said, if it's if it's an illustration which is not specifying a name, you can. It it can be a caricature, it can be anything. It can also be an editorial image which is available to be used, but it cannot be something which you directly attribute to a person telling you, okay, he is going to be
yeah,
the face of the brand. That's not going to happen.
all right. And Karthik has another question, but I'll try to just rephrase it because uh, it has the word growth hack. So let's say, for example, if you have to, if you know any particular experiences of yours in cricket.com or any of the other players, like an, a campaign or a particular marketing strategy that has worked really well for them, and you know that it has done wonders for them. So if you could share that with the
Yeah.
with,
So these were in the initial stages of me at cricket, where we were brainstorming every day with the product team. Uh, Ironically, the product person that I used to work with was also named Karthik. He used to head product there, and we used to brainstorm. We used to figure out uh, ways to be able to ensure that we are not only acquiring users but also engaging them. Right. So that was our primary goal from day one, from the get go. Okay, so it's the same Karthik here. That's why he asked the question. So yeah, so I think he knows the answer for this. He's just trying to ask me, but yeah, I'm going to tell him. So a lot depended in the beginning, where we were trying to figure out what kind of communication works, because acquisition was never a problem, but uh, trying to bracket these users in terms of what communication is bringing the kind of users that we actually need. That became extremely essential. We segregated the user base in terms of general product features that needs to go out in terms of the communication that's going across channels. We also had uh, I spoke of product features. There were also generic cricket brand campaigns that were active, which were intended to drive installs so that people are curious what is cricket.com. We were trying to leverage on that particular angle. And the third, which was the most lucrative, or I would say the hack for us, was uh, being on top of the schedule and trying to have campaigns communicating matches that were live, right? Which obviously fantasy also does. So this is not more of a hack, but this is how we distributed our acquisition strategy, which in a way helped us understand, okay, this communication is not actually not eventually giving us the kind of stickiness that we need, or the communication strategy why is giving us the kind of stickiness that we need, that might cost us a little more than what this is costing, but I think I'm going to focus there. So these were the basic analysis in the initial stages that helped us understand how do you want to scale, because if this was not clear we couldn't have scaled. From hacks perspective, I think cricket.com being a content platform, I think a lot of the hacks revolved around trying to organically create the awareness across. And Karthik has been instrumental here. He's been a communication message for cricket.com, and he's able to organically grow its reach. So I think I should give it to him more than me. I was always concentrating on how my money is being spent, but yeah, that's one major hack, because at the end you want users to come in and consume the content you want. And how do you want to promote it? Be a Telegram, or just go ahead and write in forums, give your stats out there. That's the best way to go forward.
All right. Thanks a lot, Karthik, for asking this question. And like you are doing a wonderful job. So like
Yeah.
glad to have you here. All right. So this brings me to the last question that I have. And this is more, it's not informational, or I don't want you to share the stats. I just wanted to pick your brains and what exactly are your views on this. So fantasy sports has emerged as one of the most highly engaged sectors in terms of employment, right? So what's your views on this? Like, do you think that fantasy sports is just booming for a particular quarter of an year and that's it, or do you feel that the employment that this particular sector is going to provide is going to rise more and more?
Definitely, it's going to rise more and more. I mean, there's no doubt about it. This is not a fad, or this is not a bubble that is, I
Yeah.
mean, at least it's not a very small bubble for now, even if it is for the later stage. But the if you're talking purely in respect to the kind of employment it can generate, the scope is huge, because with scale comes the kind of engagement or employment that is required, right? And the scale at which some of the companies are sitting currently, I think they need the kind of manpower to ensure that their operations, their marketing, their business, everything is running smoothly. And we're talking about scales which is growing rapidly. I mean, we are at a 32% CAGR, which is almost at the top of what our industry should be growing at. And the last 4 years showed you that. So at least for the next 10 years, I don't think employment is going to see any stunt growth. And if anything, I think there's a lot more skills that are going to be required, and that might generate even more than what is expected. And that's how it's going to grow.
All right. And one last question, and you can choose to not answer this. So after cricket.com, what's next? Where can we see you? What's happening?
Ayush, I think everyone's going to know that pretty soon.
Okay.
Uh, Currently, I mean, you could call it a stealth mode firm, which requires a little bit of scale in the beginning. So that's how I've joined them. But it's not something that I'm going to hide later on. But now is not the right time. So
Right.
I think you'll know later.
Perfect. Yeah, this brings us to the end of this session. Thanks a lot, Siddharth, for being such a
Thank you.
sport and doing it after, like, I know you have been through a lot from health
Yeah,
issue, and
yeah.
still,
But it was nice. It was refreshing. I mean, I just there's so much to talk, but I thought, okay, that's why I put these pointers down so that I could limit it.
yeah,
And it was really nice being here. Ayush, thanks for getting me here.
definitely.